particularly since you are just a little girl and the man asked to avenge. He naturally didn't inquire a lot. At evening, the news of Min Enterprise was exposed and the share that Mr. Kim took over after registering marriage certificate with late Miss Min. He stood in the living room and watched the holographic images of TV. The reporters were really fast. Jungkook hadn't come back from company but asked driver to send you back to Itaewon. You wore simple t-shirts and slippers like usual. For the first time, you felt so grateful to your husband that you didn't eat your meal and wait him to come back. If it wasn't because of John Jungkook, you would never know about your mom's tragedy. You would have always in the darkest thing that your mother had abandoned you. You wouldn't know that half of the Kim property belongs to your mother. You had never seen such a ruthless person like Mr. Kim. Now, after knowing all things, you will not sit back and do nothing. Changha called you, informing that she had been in high winter price today. That wine, don't be sad. She said, sad, you scoffed. I'm angry and relieved that I don't own Kim family for. Because no matter what Kim family did, you don't have to endure their thinking that you're the part of that family. Taking you back to Kim family is just a sense of compensation for you given by Mr. Kim of guilty. One day you want to take everything and see Kim family struggling and you want to let them torture steps by steps. Maybe you are too angry of their dissipation that you don't want to show any sympathy. They should taste of your feelings, the hurt and pain of losing someone, but blaming them unknowingly for their cruelty. Why, I didn't expect that your mother to expire. You told me before that you didn't remember much about your childhood. You don't know that mother was no more, do you? I had an accident when I was child. As the news mentioned, you pursed your lips. Forget it, you don't have to remember it. The bad shadow should be throwing in the back of your mind. Now you have a husband like John Jungkook. You don't have to worry about it. It's more important to have a good life like yours. You smiled. It's true. You actually felt that your heart skipped a beat hearing his name for no reason. After talking to your friend, you watched the news and wanted to talk with Jungkook and waited for him sitting on the sofa in the living room, but at the end you fall asleep. You rolled over and was confused. Maid knocked the door. Madam, you rubbed your head, Jungkook. You are in your bedroom. You walk towards door. Yes, I bring breakfast for you. You opened the door, stood in pajamas, and saw her holding tray sandwich. Egg roll with milk. I was waiting for Jungkook in the living room yesterday. Where is he now? Oh, yesterday, sir came so late as you fall asleep on the sofa, he carried you to room. It's already 9 a.m. Sir went to the company. You were shocked. You slept a lot. You quickly fresh up and eat the breakfast before going downstairs. Where is today's newspaper? You usually don't have a habit of reading newspaper in such an electronic media generation and such a youngster's girl. You don't like to grab the paper and read, instead you will just scroll down to articles on your newsfeed. But since you married Jungkook, it might as well affect you. As you became young girl with good habits, you smiled. Mr. Bang handed you the newspaper and he explained news briefly. Kim Group was suspected taking over the shares of another shareholders and his charity was all for himself. According to media, the share of Min Groups should be given to Miss Min's daughter Wine after she became adult, but there was not such a case. Rich people all do was show off to be good. After reading newspaper, you informed Mr. Bang, I'm going to Kim mention, madam. Mr. Bang keep his hands behind him. At this time, media's eyes are on Kim family. So I think it's not a good time to go there. I didn't occupy other people's shares. Why would I be afraid? You are the creditor for Kim family after all. You are stubborn. Even if you had set your mind, you couldn't go back to reality and accept it. In that case, Madam should call the master and tell him before going out. Why do elders like this? You made a phone call. I'm going to settle down with Kim family. Jungkook frowned slightly on the phone, but even though his voice was gentle. What are you going to do? I have said that I will deal with the rest. You didn't have the impression of your mother since you know her existence and death sentence. I was told that my mother abandoned me, not knowing that she had died decade ago. I need Kim family's explanation on it, and I should go to visit my mother's tombstone. Jungkook didn't speak for a while. Okay, take bodyguards with you. You didn't know why, but you are not resisted to Jungkook's order. Like he will ask few questions with reason. He will understand and avenge you, then ask you to bring two bodyguards on the way you talk to him. I wanted to wait for you to come back last night, but I didn't expect to fall asleep. You don't have to wait for me. He is a multinational corporation's president after all. He can be all busy sometimes and make free for himself to spend his time with his wife. Such a big event had happened. A well-known rich family's shady worked behind. The media had exposed and they will not spare anyone. It was strongly suspected when Mr. Kim didn't intend to come out and answer to the media's questions. The fact President John personally disclosed this matter in the meeting with evidence. Mr. Kim didn't expect it that one day he would be exposed. Why did you even brought her back to his house? Mrs. Kim never accepted her husband's had a daughter with another woman. You're raising a tiger for fear of trouble. Why didn't you leave her to some orphanage home? Mrs. Kim shouted, what are you saying? She's also my daughter. How can I not take care of fine? Mr. Min stood up, hands behind his back. Have not you heard of the non-toxic and unrequited husband? Mrs. Kim gritted her teeth. Let her die with her mother. Mrs. Kim was always reluctant to accept this child. Watch your mouth. Mr. Kim shouted angrily. Knowing that I had a child with Miss Min, I couldn't ignore it. Miss Min had signed her property to donate half of her orphanage home and half leaves for Ryan's name. It's all because of you. I'm doing all this for you and Kim Limited. Even though Mrs. Kim knew the fact that Mr. Kim brought back his illegitimate child to the Kim family, first she fought with her husband, but after knowing that child has a lot of benefits for them, she started to tell her husband not to do a charity, and they both had an idea to swallow all the shares and property and made some fake statements. Mrs. Kim was a greedy and ambitious woman, and she gave an idea to Mr. Kim first to register their marriage in name after Miss Min died, and they showed it like Mr. Kim hid his lover outside and later had an illegitimate child. For some reason, with the time passed, Mr. Kim started to feel pity and treated his both daughters equally. But Mrs. Kim was unhappy. She didn't want to share any happiness with her stepdaughter. Sir, little Missy is coming. Servant informed, and both Mr. and Mrs. Kim stopped arguing. What the heck she needs now? Does she think that we are not in mess? Don't let her in, Mrs. Kim shouted. Shut up, Mr. Kim stopped his wife. Don't provoke her at this critical moment. Let her in. Mr. Kim sighed helplessly and looked down. This has always been the evil mind of his wives over his heart these years. You had heard them quarreling as you stayed outside the door. You smiled mockingly when you saw them treating you like a hypocrite. You were miserable and hid from reporters everywhere, and you didn't dare to show up. When you walked in, they suddenly stopped, and Mrs. Kim shot a glare like an arrow. How are you to come here? She clenched her fists with uncomfortable anger. Mr. Kim grabbed her wrist. You smiled and looked around. Why wouldn't I dare to come? Have I done some high dress things? Mr. Kim's expression changed. You sighed. Months ago, this was my family when my aunt didn't like me, but my dad was still kind in my eyes. But I was too naive. It was different. You looked at your father. I didn't understand your heart, and I was kept in the dark. You said sarcastically, Why? Do you still know that we raised you? Mrs. Kim changed her previous voice with some hidden evil smile. You live secretly with John Jungkook and want to suppress Kim family with his power, don't you? You scoffed. To secretly live with him to borrow his power. Is there anything wrong to use your husband's power? You let Umji to hook up with Hisang for the Lee Corporation, thinking they might improve Kim Group's status. Do you still blame me for understanding them? Don't talk nonsense. They had fallen in love with each other. It's useless for you to be jealous. She smiled. You sighed. It's really useless because one day I would have dumped him. After all, Umji always loves the things I use and throw. Why? Mr. Kim finally speak. What's with your attitude? Now you are only worth of my attitude. You directly contradicted Mr. Kim and sneered. Are not you ashamed of what had you done? What qualifications do you have to talk with my husband like this? No matter how much Mrs. Kim wanted to cover her embarrassment shouting like crazy, you told your intentions of coming back in this house for the share left by your mother, but Mrs. Kim couldn't bear to give you a single shares. It made her so angry that she acted as if she would lose her life. Give the shares left by my mother. If Kim Group doesn't return the shares to me, I don't mind going through the process with you. Mrs. Kim looked at you with her trembling face and almost rushed forward to hit you. Mr. Kim knew that you were unable to win a lawsuit against Kim Group alone, but since you had already challenged them and Mr. Kim knew who's compensating you for your loss, he asked servant to send Mrs. Kim inside the room. Mrs. Kim shouted mean things and provoke you. As a businessman, Mr. Kim knows whether he lost or win to hook to a lawsuit will definitely ruin his reputation. How much do you want? He finally came to discussion. 50% of shares are belongs to my mother, you demand. Why do you think that means shares are 50% of value today? It's all because of me. I have been supporting these shares and raised the value. Why would I give you half of Kim Group's share? Do you even know how to do a business? He is negotiating. That doesn't mean that you can take over all the shares of my mother. Umji is older than you and she has never raised her voice. That is what I teach you. He gritted his teeth. The difference about his two daughters is Yvonne didn't lose her family members and they treated her fairly, while they had always make you feel that you don't owe anything in this family. Do you have to argue with me like this? His voice trembled. Of course, Dad. You said sarcastically. This is a serious matter. He have made it clear to him that if he didn't return the shares willingly, then you will sue and fight in the court. It's 2023 and the era of loneliness. Story is briefly written about the accident of Mrs. Min's tombstone. The late Mrs. Min, 1975 to 2010, passed away at the age of 35. Mom, you had gone too far. You had enjoyed your 5 years journey with her and you didn't even remember it. You put the bunch of flowers on the tombstone. A breeze blow. Maybe you don't have such a memory that you didn't shed a tears now. But there was a faint melancholy in your heart which was very wrenching. Can you go back? After a long time, the voice from behind pulled you back to your sense and you turned behind. Your husband is afraid after you told that you will go back to Kim family. He was worried about that Kim family will torn you apart. While he's the one who has been eating you with his belly full. Jungkook, let me introduce you to my mummy. You actually felt a little happy in your heart when he came to accompany you. Oh, okay. He glanced, and the tank in his eyes seemed to say that you are a little childish. Your mother had been too tired of looking at her daughter's way for long. Now, you know it's enough for her to close her eyes. Let her rest. You can keep coming here to visit. Is that how you say? You argued with him and returned to the car. You're very interested to hear it from him. How did he find out about your mother? He told the process and you keep looking at him. He told many things like a senior. As a junior, you know it. He scratched out his hand to move the strands of your hair and you are blushing. Even when he talked on the phone, you glanced and it's like falling in love. You quickly shook your head. No, you are already married to him. After returning at Villa, Jungkook directly went to the study room to sort out his work, and you fresh up and wear pajamas, waiting for him to come down and eat dinner with you. After a long time, he finally walked down, and you both went to dine. What were you busy with last night and today? You asked while chewing the food. I have been busy all the time, but you didn't ask. His words stunned you. In the past, you wanted to avoid him and stopped him to come in the middle of night asking to have you. Then why would you ask what he is doing? But how when you looked at him, he looks really different. Cool, handsome. It's no wonder. So, the point of Kim groups, I will arrange people to drop their market shares. Is that okay for you? All know, and you have heard of him being good at everything. So, there is absolutely no point explaining any further, really. Him wearing casual white shirt, leaving two buttons on purposely, sleeves rolled up, revealing tattoos, long hair, and all. Such a husband material. Jungkook is talking while you are distracted checking him out. He didn't get the response he wants. Why? Your eyes are focused on his lips as your consciousness swam to the distant place and Jungkook raised his brow. Why are you salivating? Do you want to eat my steak? What? You quickly wipe your mouth with some panic, but you are tricked by him. How could you be crazy to the point of drooling? Jungkook showed his chicken drumstick and took a bite while smirking. You can still be distracted by a word. Wine, you refreshed my understanding of you. You blushed and your ears turned red, but you decided to deny it. I wasn't distracted. I was thinking about my life just now. To appreciate the handsome man and cultivate it, his aesthetic value is definitely a hot priority for any girl, the guy of yours. Oh, tell me, he's that calm and teasy at the same time. You shook your head and play with your food. He finished eating his meal, but you are still biting your chopsticks. Cutely, such a enduring reaction, his little one have. Jungkook stood up and you looking up at him as he walked around just behind you and slightly bent down to whispers. If you like me so much, why don't you come to my room to have a look me tonight? You lowered your head. You coughed to hide your embarrassing blushes. No, no. President John is busy with everything. I can't disturb you. He smiled and ruffles your hair. All right, eat well. He walked to his study room. You are stiff all over. Whole body is hot and shy. Is he trying to flirt with you? You missed the key information for a moment, but you know Jungkook was a very reliable man. Perhaps it's very lucky for you to meet him. You couldn't deal alone with this matter. Life would have been burden to you until you met this tall, handsome, and rich guy. John Jungkook, head of it, although he stepped down as CEO of multinational companies at this young age, he is still the largest individual shareholder and therefore has bucket loads of cash. That was always going to mean a lot of money. Thinking about this, you are suddenly in a good mood and sweep all the foods on the table.